All right. Let's make sure you guys can hear me, which you can. Good. All right. So let's get into this a little bit. We're going to do some Ansible. That's the focus this week of our Linux Systems Administration course. And while I did talk yesterday for an hour on it, and we did talk on Saturday about it, I didn't spend a lot of time down in the labs. So we have a whole bunch of labs on Ansible over here. But I'm going to kind of start further down, and then we'll come back, right? So we're going to spend a little time in something a little more complex, and then we'll come back to some of this kind of lower, or the individual pieces of it. Because I know some of you guys have seen the basics. You guys have probably even done some of the basic labs and stuff. We're going to go to a little bit more of a complex lab to start. So if anybody wants to challenge themselves a little bit, here's a lab for you to do with me. It is free on Killer Coda, doesn't cost you nothing. And since we're not going to use that, I'm going to make this a little bigger for now. And we'll come back to using that other stuff when we get around to it. But for now, we're going to start on a little bit more of a challenging lab. So if you want to do the lab with me, I'll give you a minute or two to get in there. It is linked right now. And what was I going to show you? One other thing. Yeah, that's good for now. All right. We'll pull this up in a new tab because I love to do that. And this is going to be kind of our process workflow of what we're going to do. We're going to build some stuff in HashiCorp Vault. We got to use Vault. We're going to set Vault up to have the minimum password authentication through an API with their auth pass, or it's user pass, not auth pass. It's user pass authentication. We'll make a user. We'll set up a certain set of permissions for that user through what's called a policy, and then we're going to use Ansible to send that information over, pull out the secret that we were going to use. That secret, there's so many things that Vault can do. Vault can have keys, and it can go generate like one-time use keys out in the cloud for you. That's what we used to do in the home lab here. A lot of you guys have seen that if you've been around. Oh shoot, we probably haven't been doing that for about a year and a half now, but we used to do that all the time when I would stand up instances out in the cloud for you guys to use. But anyways, we're going to use Ansible. We're going to send in a username and password, get a token back. Send in that token to read a secret because that token proves that we are who we say we are. It also applies all the policies that we have to read something, and then it's going to give us back the secret, and we're going to be able to go. Maybe we've got an environment from one of our developers. You know, one of our developer groups, they've got an environment, and they want to store a secret to get into their database, maybe a string to get to the database and a password. Those are two of the most probably common things that I pass around. But I don't need to know it. I don't need to know it. Yes, because of this process, I have the ability to read it, but I want my pipeline to read it. We don't need to be sending those things around in team messages and emails and stuff. That's a security problem, right? So this is kind of a workflow that I've used professionally quite a bit. Okay. And we'll go through this. So if anybody wants to do the lab with me, hop in. This is what the workflow is going to kind of look like, right? You're going to be doing a lot of stuff and pushing a lot of buttons, but we're going to make sure that this kind of works. So I say examine the workflow. Your team is determined they need Vault to test in their dev environment. HashiCorp Vault has been installed on the server. So we're going to start the server in dev mode. We're going to export out all the values that we need so we have them. And then we're going to verify that the server is running. And here's how you can go read about it and learn more about it. And then down here, we could just start Vault server in the background. We'll just background it as a process in this shell. That's fine. We're going to export the Vault address right here. So here's our Vault address. And if you highlight something in the browser, you can do Control-Shift-V in this terminal. If you're using something like PuTTY, you just right-click. All right. So then we come down here. Now we got to export the Vault token right here. Export the Vault token is, you can also just do this. The token was made as a root token for, if you put this in right here as a variable, as the root token, then from here, from this user with the default value here for the where Vault is and where the root token is in your environment, you should then be able to go and see Vault. See the Vault status, which is unsealed. See, if sealed is true, you've got to go and do your unseal with your Shamir key. Dev Vault, the development version of Vault, non-production, never sends any data out of memory, so it just stays here in an open state. That's perfectly acceptable. All right. We can go check a little bit. We can see that our server does think it's running Vault. There it is, 8200. And then 8200 and 8201 are the two open ports for that. All right. They're both TCP. All right, good. We've got everything we need to get started. It says, now that you have Vault running, you need to create a secret. You'll be reading the secret from another tool. In a real environment, it could be populated by another processor team. So this is what I'm saying. This part of it, we're actually doing multiple roles in this lab. I don't make you think about the roles you're doing, but the building of and adding things to Vault are probably going to be done by your security team. The adding of the secret and that in the space that the team has is going to be your dev team, or maybe even some, version of some team in your environment for maybe like marketing or engineering or something. I don't know, whatever your different environments are. So you're going to have that. And then you are going to be over here as the, we're the systems administrators, the systems engineers. We're the platform team that helps to deploy this stuff in a repeatable and, let's say, clean way using our tools like Ansible in this case, right? Ansible and Vault. All right. So we go and we look at the detailed secrets that are there. And there's a lot of stuff here. This is a very busy slide, and I don't expect you to know everything on here. If you want to go get your Vault cert, which I just let mine lapse last year, the most important thing to know is that there is a key value pair, and it is version 2. When you're using version 1 of the key value pair, you can do CRUD, which is create, read, update, and delete. If you're using version 2 of the key value pair, you can CRUD, which is create, read, update, and delete. But you can also version. So what do they call? There's two other values, and I forget. I'm drawing a blank real quick because I haven't done this in a while. But they are you can read the versions. There's a term for that, and you can also prune out the old versions, right? You can update basically. But there's two other terms for that. I don't remember. Oh, sorry guys, I'm trying to catch my breath. All right, so let's create a key value where we're going to put a secret into /app1/values, and the two secrets that are going to be in there are going to be the key username with the value secret user, and the password key and the value of super secure. I know, secret user, super secure, best security posture ever, right? But here's the secret path now. Secret data apps1 or app1 values. Now, we can go read that here, but the reason we can read that in that location of our vault is because we're the root user. The root user has the authority. We are the vault root. We have the vault root token assigned to our user, right, as a variable. So we can do whatever we want. This, again, is kind of like what a security team might do. They might set this up and then give that team permissions here with some of these other things we're going to do to update their own stuff. But they're going to be the ones managing the vault. If you want to think of this in Harry Potter's terms, there's like those little goblins in the bank. Do you guys remember the little goblins that ran the bank? That was kind of funny. But over here, we've got that part done. The vault is set up. And now we're going to create a secret. We're going to have programmatic access given to that secret. So we have to enable, if you go look at Vault, right? If you say Vault, enable auth pass. When you look at the different types of auth, I think they should have it here. I'm just looking in their documentation. They should show you there are multiple ways to authenticate, right? There's all kinds of ways to authenticate into Vault. We are just going to give the system the auth pass, so user pass for auth, right? And then we're going to create a user, and we're going to give that user a policy to read that app. There would also probably be another user with another policy to create and update that app, and that would belong to those teams, right? So I just want you guys to think in the abstract a little bit. We're doing a discrete set of steps here, but we're also thinking about how this feeds back into the company. So we're going to do Vault auth enable user pass, and it says, look, success, we enabled this method of coming in as a user. Some user with a key and a value or a whatever. And we're going to vault write a user Ansible, right? So an auth user pass users. We made Ansible with the password, and that's a super secure 12 shift 34, right? So it's Ansible 12 shift 34. Boom, very secure. Now we're going to make a policy. We're just going to make a JSON file on our local system. If we were to just cat Ansible policy right here, this is the simple JSON. And we say that down in the path secret anything, which we know that secret has apps1 and then the values, right? We're going to be able to create, read, update, delete. Here's the other two that I couldn't remember. List, which lists the old versions, and then patch, which can make new versions of a value. Hey, how's it going, Street Track? I am just working through, since we're doing Linux Systems Administration and it's like an automation week, I decided to just hop on and do automation for people. So if you guys want to focus on automation a little bit and talk automation and all that kind of stuff, then that's what we're going to do. And I'm doing one of the more complex labs that we have where we kind of work through this process. All right, so we're still over on the Vault space. We haven't even gotten to the Ansible space yet. Now we're going to write in that policy that we just made, root ansible-policy.hcl, that's the HashiCorp language. We're going to write that in as a policy that can then be used called Ansible policy. So Ansible_policy now exists as a policy inside the system. And we're going to write that policy to the user Ansible. So we created a user. We created a policy outside of Vault. We loaded the policy into Vault. We assigned the policy to the user. And now let's read the user and see that the user has the policy Ansible_policy. That policy will, again, allow them down in secret and then app1 values to see the create, read, update, delete, list, and patch. If this was a real pipeline tool, right? Just think about this for a second. This is a pipeline. It's going to be part of, Scott's writing his Ansible to do part of a CI/CD pipeline that some other tool is going to call, and it's going to go and it's going to pull these values that some team has put in there, and then it's going to run through my playbook that updates, and maybe it deploys my MySQL to an environment on some servers. It's going to deploy, it's going to deploy these things out in the environment. But I need to go get their secrets to be able to put it into their code wherever I need to put it in. This would be probably best to just read, maybe to read and list, because those are the only things it needs to do. Maybe I need to read values, and that's the most current one, and maybe I need to list older versions, because to see older versions of the key, maybe for a different environment, and then I call back to older versions of the key for different. There's all kinds of things you guys can do. We're just focusing on the basic stuff now. I'm going far afield because I know some people know this stuff and are running, and I just want to talk about some of the more complex stuff. But the simple stuff, you can do this simple stuff. You can hold this in your hand and understand this workflow. This isn't impossible for you, right? All right, so we know that that's all working. We got the user set up. So now everything's set up in Vault. So now we have to use Ansible to pull the information that we want out of there. We have this information that some other team set up for us. Since we cannot leave our passwords in Ansible out in the open, we will be using Ansible Vault to hold our information, so that's good. We'll test first, and then we'll use Ansible Vault to hold our user information. Then we'll create a playbook that uses username and password to get the Vault token. That's the first thing we need to do. So secure our username and password with the Vault file, good. And then modify our playbook to feed that token back in and read out the secret data. So, real quick, Ansible is going to go and hit Vault and say, I'm the user Ansible with this password. Please give me a token so that I can run around like this with the token and show it to things. And if I have the permission against those fields or against those paths in Vault, it will let me read, in this case, create, read, update, delete, or list, or patch, which we don't need to do all that. We just need to read the values out of the system. Is that, hopefully that's clear as mud, right? So we come down here, and then we'll write out the password with the Jinja template if we wanted to. So let's make sure Ansible's here. We need the tool, right? Need the tool so we can do the tool things. Let's get Ansible in there. And then let's go create a playbook that can authenticate to the vault, right? And we've got one here. We've got a version of it here. But as we go and drop it in, let's look at the different pieces of it to see what it's doing, okay? Because this is where the value of this is. This is where I want to say rubber meets the road. I know I say that a lot, but it's kind of a big deal to understand the secret read read.yaml. YAML or YML is fine. It depends where you come from. And let's grab this. And let's just look real quick at what this is going to do. It's got an arbitrary, so it's got 3 dashes at the top to let the system know that it's a YAML file. Good. It's got a dash name, and name is arbitrary. Read the variables. That's all we want to do with it. It's just reading variables. The hosts, this is a special host. You don't need a host file for this to work, but localhost is your machine. So your machine is going to go make an API call. Pretty straightforward. If you go and you do a bunch of these as you execute this, if you do a bunch of these at the command line, you'll just see that all Ansible does is spawn a new shell and then run everything inside of the new shell. So technically, your user does have to have the ability to spawn a new shell, but we're root, so we do whatever the heck we want. We don't have any special vars to give it. We will later. We want to gather tasks true just in case we need to do any variable stuff or time or whatever. Become is false because we're already root. If we had a become method, we could put that in here. Become by default uses sudo. And then we're going to start executing tasks. Tasks are down here. They've got a dash in front of them so that we know that they're a list item. And, okay. And then the first one, this just has an arbitrary name. Just like down here, that's an arbitrary name. Now, when I say arbitrary, you know, some of you are like, what the heck is Scott talking about arbitrary? Arbitrary just means it doesn't matter. This could be any block of, you know, characters that function as like non-executable code, right? This is just a string, as it were, right? This is just a string of non-useful data. If it had the number 1 there, or it had the number 76, or it said test my connection to vault credentials, it doesn't matter. It's arbitrary. So hopefully that makes sense. The module is the URI module. We know how to go find out more information about the URI module. We could either read Ansible-doc-s with the name URI and read the at the command line, or we can go into the Ansible doc pages out on the web and we can look at them that way. So those are the 2 ways that I know to go get that information. I guess you could just memorize everything the first time you read it, but I can't do that. So maybe when I was in my 20s I could do that, but not anymore. Here's my URL. I have hard-coded my URL all the way down to the username we want to use. Now, if you saw it earlier, that username variable is going to be the Ansible user, right? But we kind of left it like this just in case we needed to reuse this. Also, we could reuse this path, and we could have a variable for path that we feed in from an environment file. We do the simple thing first so we see it work, and then we go, okay, and then we run off and do all these, you know, complex things. We want to return the content because we want to see it. It's going to be in, we're going to post first, and the body format's going to be JSON, and all that's going to be in the body is the password. It's a key value of password : password. So the password that we're giving in. And then we're going to register user connect, which is going to mean that variable comes and goes in Ansible's little sack, user connect. And then down here, we're going to debug that variable so we can see it work. That's it. That's all we're going to do. So we're going to say escape : WQ. We should be able to cat it if we want. Right? Looks good. And we come down here and we can execute that playbook. But if we just execute the playbook, if we just say Ansible playbook, root secret read, does anybody know what's going to break here? It's going to break, but does anybody know how it's going to break? Well, there's 2 variables that are undefined right now, username and password, right? So up here, we can give the extra variables at the command line if we want. Username Ansible, password Ansible with that long line. But we don't necessarily want to give usernames and passwords at the command line like that, right? That's insecure. So we're going to secure that by putting that in Vault here in a second. But we come down here and we see that it's going to gather the facts and then it's going to test the connection. And then once it does that connection out, it got a bunch of values back, and now we're debugging the user connect. Did user connect work? Yeah, it looks like it because it gave us a bunch of information back. And when we get down here to user underscore connect dot JSON dot client token, dot auth dot client token, we have a token right here that we can now use to tell Vault. We have authenticated to Vault that we are the user Ansible. Now we can run around with this little token and do API calls against the paths. And if we have, according to the policy that's assigned to our user, create, read, update, delete, create, read, update, delete, list, or patch, right? Those are the two new ones. Then we can go do all that stuff in the environment. There's a bunch of other stuff that doesn't really matter too much. Big thing, status 200. We could use that to test whether or not this is all working. Yeah, Boris, this is going to be recorded. We record all of our stuff. It's all up in YouTube. So that's good, and we said that's cool. But let's go ahead and create a vault now, and the vault password is going to be something super easy, like Ansible 1234, and then Ansible 1234. So we've got this, and now in there we're going to go put that username and password. So now if somebody tries to look at our vault, it's AES 256 encrypted, which is the minimum encryption standard for the internet. I know you guys hear me say that a lot, but on the cloud and for things that sit in the cloud and for things that you want to have a reasonable amount of entropy in case somebody gets a hold of them that they're not going to crack them, AES 256 is the current minimum. I'm sure soon in my, talking about this, it's going to be like 512, AES 512 or some new standard, but for the last few years it's been AES 256. That's the minimum key stuff that you're going to see when you do like KMS or key services in Azure. That's going to be the minimum. So that's also what Vault uses. So that's what we're using there. You can't get at that anymore. You can't view it anymore. But to use that file now, there's two things we have to add to our play. In the playbook, we have to add this little set of lines here that I'm about to show you. And then the other thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to either pass in, there's like an either or option at the command line. We're either going to pass in at the command line, and it won't echo out to the screen, the password for the vault, or we're going to have a password file hidden somewhere. You could do either one. There's different reasons for each. I'm showing you a very simple way of doing it, but in the industry, we tend to store those values off in like a vault up in like AWX or Ansible Automation Platform or some other secret, There's always a trade-off for what we do with our secrets. But anyways, let's go. Let's fix this. We got to go fix the playbook real quick. To add in right here, there's some stuff we have to add. We have to add vars files. It's a kind of weird term. And then right here, we can just say root vault.yaml. I have to use the same thing that I did here. If so, YML or YAML, whichever one you prefer. Just make sure they're the same. And then now if I cat out that file, we see that I've added in a vars file that's going to hold some variables for me so that username and password can be passed in out of there. Got to decrypt it first, or and then we don't have to put it at the command line anymore because we don't want to be putting our passwords at the command line. So real quick, let's rerun the playbook from earlier. Let's rerun this one, and you're going to see a different error than earlier. Now it says, "Hey, buddy, you got a vault in here, and I don't have a way to decrypt the vault. So can you help me out there?" And again, there's two ways that it can do it. It can either do it this way, where it asks for the vault password. We say Ansible 1234, or it could have been we hit a key somewhere. All right, so we get the same output. We had the same username and password passed in. We got a new token, and then we can go and look and see information about the tokens. One of the things that's kind of interesting about the token, is the lease duration here, and it should tell us when. Yeah, here's our age for it, and I want to say the default is like 30 or 31 days or something. I don't know exactly. Hey, Rossberg, how's it going? And Runamucker. We're doing a lab right now because this week we're in Unit 14 of the Linux Systems Administration course. So because we've been focusing on Ansible so much, I'm using Ansible right now in a little bit of a more complex way than we normally would. Like, normally I show you guys very simple things, and this one is a lot more complex. We've got this is the drawing of what we're doing. We've got a tool called Vault. It's HashiCorp Vault. HashiCorp is owned by IBM now, just like Red Hat is. So in Vault, we can create a secret, we can create a user, and then we can give permissions to that user to do a thing. Then we use Ansible, and we say, Ansible, you're that user. Come in and get a token. That's where we're at right now. We're sending in our username and password, and we're pulling out a token. Now we're going to run around like a little kid at like a carnival with our little ticket, our little token, and we're going to say, hey, can I get on this ride? And hey, can I get on this ride? And if you have permissions to read the thing that you asked to read, like you were trying to get on a ride, you will get back a yes. You will get back the permissions that we have hidden in there, right? Get at, like I like to say, the tasty data. So, yeah, Ross, I was on your stream earlier hanging out. I was not working too hard. But yeah, I love that Wayne's World with the backstage passes from Wayne's World 2 where they're like, they've got the backstage passes. I've turned that into a little GIF meme before for like every time the security training comes around for a company. I think CISSPs should be able to go, I'm a CISSP. I don't have to do this. I have the security standard, right? I know this. All right. So we've set up Vault. We've done all that. Let's add in the next part of the playbook. Playbooks look really complex, but they're doing very simple things, guys. All this one's doing here is 2 tasks. It's going out there and saying, I am Ansible with a password, and it's getting back a value. Now we're going to add in this part right here, and I'm just going to, I'm going to copy and paste it. Copy and paste. And what's going to happen next is we're going to go and we're going to hit that secret path. Remember, it was secret data app1 values. That was where we put the username and password to get into our database or our cloud resource, or I don't know, whatever secret we want to go get out of the vault. We've authenticated that we are Ansible as a user. So we're running around like this. This thing's going to see that you do indeed have create, read, update, delete, list, and patch. You've got those 6 permissions. And then it's going to register the variable and hold the variable. Vault runs API. Vault has an API. Yeah, it's on 8200, port 8200. And you can actually force it to be HTTPS if you want, which I will always recommend. But just in this lab, we don't do it. We do it in one of the other labs. But Vault does run a local API that all your stuff can hit. Yeah. In fact, I did a talk a couple of years back at a Kubernetes group. We probably had about 80 of us in there. And I did a talk. I can show you guys the talk if you want, how I used to do this. And this is up in our Discord, too. I'll pull the talk up next, which will show you guys how this all works. But the what's going to happen here is we're going to get the secret creds out, and then we're going to debug the secret creds, which means just show them to the screen. You would normally not do this. You would normally not just dump all the tasty data, all the important secret data out to the screen. But we're going to do it because we want to see it. And actually, then we'll just do that for now. Yeah. So we'll just right quit that, and then let's read this. Let's run through this and make it work. Ansible 1 2 3 4 is our secret into the Vault password. This is going to go out. It's going to get a new token, and then it's going to read. And right here, so again, look up here. We went in. We showed that we were the Ansible user. We got a cool little client token right here. That client token is accessible by being user_connect.json.auth.client token. Okay? That's the hierarchy of JSON data. user_connect.json.auth.client token. I'll show you that here again in a second. Then we come down here and we take that and we go and we show it to that path. And right here we get secret_creds.json.data.password is super secure. That was our password. And secret_creds.json.data.data.username is secret user. It's our secret user. So secret user and secret password, boom. Or username and password right there. So let's go look real quick to make sure I'm not lying to you. When we got down here, look real quick. The VaultX token that we had to go put in was user_connect.json.auth.client_token. So nothing up my sleeves. I wasn't even touching my keyboard. After this runs, that's where that variable got stored. We just happened to show the variable to the screen because we wanted to look at it. And then that that token had to be given back into Vault as an X Vault token. That's a very specific header that must be in that exact same way. And then it goes. Now, if any of you guys are going to use Vault or play with Vault, I tell you guys this all the time. Here is the, I mean, we've got all these things out there on the web, but these are free. If you want to go take this code, just go take it. I don't care. If this works for you, use it. It will work in Ansible as long as you have the paths all the same. But my point is, it's like that old thing. Like, hey, sorry, bro, I stole your code, and it's like, dude, it was stolen when I got it, right? Like, I mean, I wrote this stuff, but the point is, like, this is the way to do it. There's no secret here. I didn't write something that you couldn't go figure out if you were to go look at the docs. All I'm doing is saving you a little bit of time looking at the docs, right? For most of you, because again, I tell you guys all the time. The barrier to learn this for most people is just not getting it to work the first time. But if you get this to just work and you run through this lab and then you go, I get that. You're probably already better at it than me after that. Because I show people this stuff all the time. I tell you guys this. Some of you guys think I'm kidding, but I've been showing engineers how to do stuff for years and years and years. And then what'll happen is they'll turn around and like 2 weeks later be like, Scott, will you go look at this for me? Like make sure this looks good. And I'll be looking at this stuff that I'm like, oh, this is way more complex than anything I know. I just do simple stuff well, guys. I do the basic stuff well, and that works for me. I don't do super complex things. So I hope that this lab works well for you guys. This isn't even in the Ansible labs. This is over in the HashiCorp labs. All right, so you can show these individual things if you wanted to down here. So I'm going to hit O, and then I'm just going to Control-Shift-V to paste these ones in. And if we did the same exact steps again, just rerun it with the Ansible 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops. Gotta do it right. Now at the end, you'll see the two things decrypted down to the secret user and super secure. So you had the values here, but I broke them out into what they were, which was secret underscore creds JSON. And I can use this variable. Ansible keeps all the variables in a little sack. It's like Krampus. It comes along, and it's got all the variables, all the things that it's done in a sack. And anywhere in the environment that I needed to drop this value in for maybe your development, your development, I don't know, you're like the development Java, maybe shopping cart update team 2, and you're this team that's just like building the back end of our web application. We've got a running one, but you guys are constantly optimizing it and stuff, and you need me to just build a little pipeline that takes whatever you guys are doing and deploys it into a new environment over and over again. This is the workflow that would work with that if you're using Vault as your central storage. And a lot of companies. Oh, I didn't even finish my thought earlier. When I did that talk at that, it was actually at Drive Time out here in Phoenix, and it was to the Kubernetes group. And there's probably like 70 people. The other person that talked besides me was one of the engineers over at ASU, and he was telling us that ASU uses this for all of their student authentication. They use Vault. They use the free version of Vault, and they have over 180,000 transactions a day against it on just a free version of Vault. I mean, probably a little beefier system than this, but also this is a dev server, so I have to emphasize the same thing that it says when you start a dev server. A dev server is not acceptable for production workloads. Build a production server. If you need help building a production server, I can show you how to do that down in the Discord sometime. Go pull up this talk. I haven't looked at this talk in a long time. So it is down in our Kubernetes topics, I think, because I actually gave the talk. No, it is in HashiCorp, but I gave it to a Kubernetes group. Vault topics. All right. So, yeah, June of 2022. So it was a while ago when I did this. This is up in the Discord if you guys want it, right? So if you guys want to go grab it. By the way, I don't care if you guys know who I am. I tell you guys all the time I'm a real person. Almost every time I show my name on screen, somebody asks to be my friend on LinkedIn. I don't mind connecting with people on LinkedIn. I don't mind connecting with tech people. I'm very much like becoming very cynical about people who do recruiting and stuff. Like, I'm not looking for more friends. I'm not looking for a big like network. I'm not trying to be cool on LinkedIn or anything. And I detest people who join to like connect with you, and then when you ask them a question about like, hey, would you come talk to this group of engineers about what your company does, they don't even respond to you. That like immediately gets people kicked off my thing, because I don't, you know what I'm saying, like I haven't been looking for jobs the last 10 times I've moved jobs. Like, people come to me because I've been doing this so long. Anyways, this was a HashiCorp Vault use case to pull dynamic credentials for a cloud lab deployment with Terraform. This is actually something I used to do on stream here, and some of you guys have seen this before. Very simple. This is a little bit about me. I was still at CSAA at the time. My brother's over there too, college professor, all this stuff. You guys know all this stuff about me. All right. So here's the scenario, right? I was learning Vault. I was getting ready to take my Vault certification. Actually, at this time, I had already passed my Vault certification, but I was getting ready to when I wrote this scenario. And I wanted to give people access to servers that were exactly the same type of servers that I build and run, so that if I was to like explain something to you guys and talk you through how to do something, what I wanted you guys to be able to do was do the exact same thing as me in the exact same EC2 instances as me. And this is what I used to do. I used to blow these up in Terraform, and then you guys would access them, and then I would turn them off like 6 hours later. This was like a thing we did every Sunday. We had Lab Sunday. And if you go look in our Discord and go back in the Sandbox channel, you can actually find where I used to deploy them, and they would be fresh instances of servers, and you guys could just jump in them with the username and password that I would generate for each week, right? Anyway, so enough of the boring stuff in history. This is slightly different than the lab in that instead of pulling a credential, I'm using a Vault secret. So earlier we did Vault secret auth pass. Now we're doing Vault secret enable path AWS as AWS. So we're allowing Vault to access AWS for us, and then we have to give it our root access key and our root secret key, but it's not for the root user. Like, you don't give them the root. You don't deploy things as the root user in the cloud. Let's make sure you know that. This is a Vault root concept, but you give them an access key and a secret key that have to have the ability to generate other users in whatever region. And I always use US West 2 because that's where I like to deploy things up to Oregon. And then what I can do, I could say that Vault Right AWS role could, and then the my role, this is just the generic name I gave it, was a credential type that could make identity and access. So it was named Identity and Access Management User. And then the policy document had these values in it. It was allowed to create identity and access management users that could do anything with EC2 instances. So that means they could create, delete, update, do all things with EC2. There's a whole list of identity and access policy things. Now you say, wait, were you giving this to the users? No. This was simply part of my workflow. So this was my workflow would come in. You're going to see this here in a little bit. It would do the same type of steps that we just did, but it would be generating a key out in the cloud that had the permissions to deploy EC2 resources, okay? And then the one thing that we did differently here that I didn't do this the other way was I tuned down the default lease to only be 10 minutes. So one of the problems in the cloud, identity and access management, one of the things that users always complain about is long running keys and long running, they give permissions that are there forever. Well, these credentials would have been good for 31 days, I think, by default. But it's like 30 or 31 days. I moved it down to 10 minutes. So you only have 10 minutes to make use of this. But I'm using it in a pipeline, so I don't give a shit. I'm using it like 20 seconds into making it. Does that make sense? And I'll never need it again because I'll generate a new one for a new run. So even if I did 5 runs in a row, I would have 10 keys that are slowly dying at 10 minutes each, right? Does that kind of make sense? And then this is how we make sure everything looks right. We would do a Vault read AWS roles my roles, and we would see the policy document in there for the credential type identity and access management user. Cool. We would read that. This would be if we pulled a new credential, we could go look at the credential. It says it has 10 minutes. And then we can go and look at all the leases and keys that are available. Like maybe I run this 10 times, I would see 10 keys here. And then I could go look at the keys again, and I would see that they were dying slowly. There's this time to live. It slowly dies. You could also manually revoke the policy if anything came up, but For the most part, you're not going to need that. You're just going to run through it. And it would tell you that it properly revoked that thing. That mapping comes back from the list of keys back here. So you look at all the leases, get that value, drop it in here, immediately rescind some value. Again, part of a pipeline, so it's not really something that you would probably do. Then we came down here and I set up user pass, and I gave the Ansible user some password. And then I did the very same thing that we did in that lab earlier. I generated a policy, but this policy couldn't do the create, update, delete, list, or patch. It could only do the read. So this comes in and only reads properly. And then we write that policy like we did earlier, and we give that policy to the Ansible user. Boom. So now our Ansible can call that and generate a set of keys to do our have Vault go and generate 2 keys that could then be used up in the cloud. Okay. So then we can verify the policy, Ansible policy for the Ansible user. Good. I gave this talk again a couple years ago, so I haven't looked at this in a while. Now we set up Ansible to get the token. This is the exact same thing you guys just did. You passed in Ansible as the username, and you passed in password. So then we read the secret. We got that client, and we pulled it down. Boom, boom, boom. This is the same thing. I just called it AWS creds. And then the last thing we did, and this is something that we were in it was a Kubernetes group, so a lot of people were really interested in Terraform. So this is my basic main little Terraform that would deploy all of them. It just looked like this. I would go AWS in US West Region 2. As I called it, I would give it the username, the access key and the secret access key that had been given to me that were only good for 10 minutes. I would deploy a resource of AWS instances named lab with a count of 10 against an Amazon machine image that I had built with Packer. I was always building those with Packer back then. T2 micro, we called it stream test. So you would have the ability to use the key stream test if you had that key. Or down here in the user data, which is kind of the personalization of a server, I would go and I would add a few things that I needed. And one of the things that I would do is maybe add Vault. And then down here, I would also add some user configuration things so that you could then log in as the stream user, right? Whatever the stream user was that I generated for that week. And then I would output all the instances here as all of their names. And then I would push that data out to, this is actually something that used to come, you guys could go find this in the Discord if you wanted, where it would just tell you all the EC2 instances and you could just go connect to one. And the remote user would be Streamlab, and the remote password would be prolug is okayish 1378, and you would log into that server and use it for the next 4 hours or whatever. And this was the block to push it out to Discord. Also, this week, if you're doing the Professional Linux Users Group Linux Systems Administration course, so that's in Unit 14, we have an automation section this week. And, well, it's all automation this week. That's why we're doing all this Ansible. And there's a question. I actually give you guys a webhook to send data into our sandbox. So if you want to send your own little text, you could do that right here. And again, this is up. This is called Vault Presentation. It's up in our Discord. Questions, there's the way to contact me. That's actually old contact information, so it doesn't really matter if you see it because you wouldn't be able. That's old ways to reach me. So I'm not at AAA anymore. So all right. Anyway, so that's something for you guys to think about as you kind of look at this, right? You can do these labs and you can figure out a lot of things and start to think about what your use cases would be, right? What would your use cases be? How would you think to do this? How would you integrate this with a team? Because again, like a lot of the stuff you do in the engineering world, it's almost stupid easy to do stuff by yourself. Like stuff in my lab, when I want to set something up in my lab, it's easy. Just go build it. But when I want to work with another team, it's the same thing with some of you guys that probably write code and put it up on GitHub. Super easy to do that crap by yourself. I don't even have to be very good at coding, and I can put stuff up on GitHub. But when you want to work on a team and you want to integrate your stuff with other people, now you got to learn branching and you got to learn code commit and pull request and all these things, right? And merging, right? All these merge conflicts. That's a whole different thing. That adds this whole layer of complexity to things, which it's valuable to know how to do it. But My point in saying all this is you can think about the ways that you can make your life as a platform engineer or a platform administrator easier by knowing how to use these tools to make the requests that come to you much more repeatable in a very kind of pipeline way. All this stuff that you're doing here, you could pipeline this out super easy. And then you say, well, but Ansible itself just kind of sits there inert. Yeah, I agree. Ansible's like this. Where's Ansible? Where's Ansible? Oh, did I not pull it down? I didn't use it. All right, well, I didn't use the one part of the talk that I wanted to use. Ansible's like this little, like he's poking it with a stick and he's like, do something. Ansible's just laying there. It needs a tool, so like Jenkins or your code pipeline or whatever tool to run the thing. So, all right, guys, I think the wife got home, so I'm gonna only hang on here for a little bit longer, but then we'll get off of here. What I was gonna show you tonight is I was gonna start going through. We hit this Ansible playbook. We learned how to do quite a bit. If we went back through it, there's quite a bit of stuff that we kind of picked up. But what I was going to do was start going through the labs, and I was going to start a little further down because we did all the basic stuff the other day. I didn't want to start people over again if they had been here. But we were going to start probably in Jinja templates, and we were going to start digging into these. So we'll probably maybe start doing that tomorrow night. We'll look at what our timing looks like for streaming here. What's today? Today's only Monday, right? Yeah, so I got a little more time. But we'll get all that going. So, all right. Yeah, Street Track. If you're getting the AWS Solutions Architect, by the way, my brother just passed his like 2 days ago. So, 2 or 3 days ago. And then there's a few of us that are pros in the server, Solutions Architect pros, me and Fisherman. I'm trying to think of who else is a Solutions Architect pro. Michael Pessa, who some of you guys met on Saturday or heard talk on Saturday, he is not a Solutions Architect pro, but he is a DevOps pro. So he's got 4 or 5 of the AWS certs as well. But he went the DevOps route, so he's got all those type 1s. So he's real good to ask about that kind of stuff. Plus, he's worked in that space a long time too. And remember, if you guys, if you guys are ever looking here at our Discord, you can always go in Discord. It bugs me so much. People are like dragging around the channels. And I think only the I don't know who all can do that. But anyways, we've got a couple more meetings of this. We're almost done with all this. I'm 100% sure that this got changed, and the reason I know that is because I made sure that it ended on the 28th. So the 28th is the last meeting of this. There aren't these other ones. So, yeah, those other ones don't exist. Well, maybe we'll go out to the 11th because we end on the 19th. So maybe I'll leave those ones up. But I was going to tell you guys, Michael Pessa is going to come back and talk to you guys again on January 11th. So if you liked his other talks, make sure you're around for his Kubernetes one, because he kind of showed you guys a bunch of Ansible this last weekend, but now he's going to do the Kubernetes side of that same stuff. And he's going to show you, he's been using almost exclusively Kubernetes in the industry for the last few years. So, and he's at a pretty cool startup. So if you guys, I'm not going to out him, he'll tell you guys where he's at, but he's got some pretty good stuff for you guys. Discord's always free. You guys are always welcome to go hang out down in there. Here it is on the Twitch side and over there on the YouTube side as well. So feel free to get in there if you guys want to do that kind of stuff. All right. What else? So, yeah, I don't have as much time because the wife's home, so I'll probably get off of here shortly. But if you do go into our creator scenarios here, and you go into our Ansible labs, here's all the Ansible stuff for you guys. Again, Killer Code is free. I think it's one of the best things on the web. How's it going, Robodom? We just got done doing a lab, and then we were thinking about maybe working on some more depending on what the wife's up to. I think she said she's downstairs working on some, what's she doing? She's doing some kind of decorating. Let's go check on Ranger. How's Ranger doing? How's Ranger doing? If Ranger's up and about, that means the wife's probably downstairs. That's going slow. That's not good. Yeah, Robdom, you're giving people a Discord. That's always good. Is Ranger coming up? Ranger cam? Ranger's tree has burned out lights at the bottom. Very embarrassing. It's one of 3 trees that we have in the house. So, Ranger doing Ranger things. This was our workflow from earlier. I showed you guys that. I'm constantly telling you guys about like the site reliability engineering books from Google. They're free. You guys can always hang out down in there. Those are free. They give you those. You can go look them. They even get updated every now and then, so that's kind of nice. And then some of my students were asking about like training in Azure and AWS. There's some good training resources out there for you guys for free, right? Robdom, you only have 1 tree? Well, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. I have the 1 tree up in the front room that's 12 feet, and that one's a hassle to get up and down. It's going. This is its 2nd year. We're gonna try to keep that one around for as long as it'll hold up. It's pretty good. It's pretty durable little thing too. So it comes in 5 pieces, like 5 big monstrous pieces, and well, the wife likes it, so I put it up for her every year. What else? Man, this is probably for almost an hour here. This is probably like the least talking anybody's ever done. Maybe it's because I was doing so much Ansible stuff, but I don't have any questions or anything. It's 12-foot Robdom, yeah. Actually, and it fits perfectly in front of the window. If it had been taller, we would have had to move it left, and it wouldn't fit directly in front of the window right anymore because of the way our kind of like vaulted ceilings go. So, yeah. And then Trevor over on YouTube, yeah, we were doing. I was going through one of my Vault labs, and I was showing how Ansible interacts with Vault, and that's all you missed, Trevor, if you got here right now. And Robodom, you didn't miss anything, Robodom, because you've probably seen it like 10 times. So, yeah, maybe we'll do a couple more. We'll work through a couple more. Let's do some Jinja stuff, because Jinja, it's useful. If you're already using Ansible and you're not using Jinja templates, this will be a good one for you. If you aren't using Ansible and you want to know why you should, this is maybe going to give you some good reasons why you would. So, Boris said, Scott, what do I think will be after this class? Oh, well, we'll finish up the Linux Systems Administration course, so we'll get that out of the way. That'll be done middle of January. And then what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to do just a straight engineering course for people. It won't directly be Linux. I mean, we'll be using Linux. We'll be using Linux and Python the whole time, right? But it'll be focused on the engineering side of things. So for people who are like, well, I like Linux and I like being a hobbyist in Linux, but I kind of want to just like focus on engineering or something, or maybe you're like, well, I'd like to just keep Linux as a hobby and I'll do other stuff. It'll probably be more of all the stuff that goes around Linux. However, if you're like, I want to be a Linux engineer, it will also be a course directly for that, like, because we're going to be using Linux and Python to do engineering. So I will focus. This course has been systems administration, right? And I have greatly held back on going deep into like the numbers and the way that we measure things, but I think we have all the tools for people that are doing sysadmin work to go be engineers, but we have to know how to use our tools as administrators first, right? So that's kind of where that's going. So hopefully that answers your question, Boris. That's probably where we're going. I got a lot of work to do on my dissertation too, so that'll be a thing. All right, so let's do this lab. This lab, I didn't link it to you guys. Here it is on the Twitch side, and here it is on the YouTube side. So, you have been using Ansible and have decided to work with the templating tool that comes with it. So, maybe you already have been pushing things, and maybe you've been trying to gather data and get better at that. I'm going to show you 2 ways to use Jinja. There's 2 ways that I use Jinja templating. The first one is we're going to stamp information out to servers. We're going to stamp information out to the servers as we do a deployment, let's say. So your team wants to verify that certain conditions exist when a deployment occurs, and you figure that you use Jinja for that task. So okay. Here's additional questions over here. This is from the book. So people are like, oh, hey, Scott's got this book or whatever. I don't really push the book very much. But if you do want to use the book to get more information and kind of dig a little deeper into this, these are the types of questions that come from the book over here. So we're kind of doing the labs and going back and forth. And you would take these and you would journal on them, right? So now we're going to verify our host file. So cat root hosts. Got that. And we'll cat root template.j2. So do we have a template file? No, we don't. We're going to have to make it, or we're going to have to copy it. And so we're going to have two files. We're going to have a YAML and a template for J2. So let's go look at those. Let's copy them over. And let's just cat out root template.yaml. Now, by the time we get down here, as using Ansible, you're already in Lab 7 if you go through all of them. You know how to build this starting block. This starting block is kind of generic to all Ansible. Wife, are you coming up? Okay. You can come sit by me if you want. I'm sure everybody will want to ask you questions. All right. So, there's three dashes at the top to denote that it's a YAML file. There's all the same things, that we talked about earlier. There's a arbitrary name. Doesn't matter what you put in name. Servers here is the host group that you want to hit. This matters very much back towards the inventory file back here. Yeah, the missus, she'll be wandering in here in a minute probably. We want to gather facts true because we're going to need facts to jump and put down into our little Jinja template. And then now we're going to do the simplest little task ever. Look, this task has even moved over more than it needs to be, but it's fine. We're going to copy a template over to all hosts, and then we're going to use the template module to go from this source template here out to that destination. Now, real quick, full stop before we go any further. Let's look at this. This template is just like if you've ever done a little ad lib or a mad lib, whatever you want to call those little things, where it's going to read through the template and go put it on that server, as we say, as root template.text. But it's going to, in each of those places where a variable is named, if it knows the name of the variable, and if it doesn't know the name of the variable, it's going to break everywhere. If it does know the name of the variable, it's going to drop that variable value in there. Okay? That's all it's going to do. It'd just be like if I was sitting here and I was like, hey, give me a noun, and you guys were like turtle, and I'm like, give me another noun, and you said like rabbit, and I go, okay. And then I say, give me an adjective, and you're like fast. And then I say, give me another adjective, and you're like slow. And then I put the story together. That's exactly what these little templates are like. If you've ever filled one of those out or had your friends fill them out, and then they just have like stupid little stories that don't make any sense, but you put in all the parts of speech that you needed. It's exactly how variables work. The only thing else to say about variables is you put two curly brackets around them, or braces, whatever you want to call them. They're super easy, right? All right, so let's run this and see what happens. Here's our solution. Execute it. So execute it. It's going to run. And it's going to push to both servers that template. And then I can go look at it on both servers by running a little ad hoc command in Ansible. And while we originally saw this value right here, look, we saw this. This is what was put on the server. It went and it found the Ansible datetime.date. It found the Ansible datetime.time. Where did it find that? At the beginning of the playbook, it was told to gather facts. So it went and ran factor against all the servers. That setup, what we call the setup, is right here, gathering facts. And it says okay on both the nodes. Don't worry about the depreciation warning. We could get rid of that if we wanted. But then we copied the template over, and we had 2 okay and 1 changed, which, by the way, was pushing that over, right? Boom. It says it was at this time, and control plane Debian 1 processor, node 01 Debian 1 processor. Now, you might say, Scott, that's real well and good, but what if I wanted to update these? I get that I can stamp your stamp. That's cool. Thanks, bro. But where would I get more of these? And I say, well, I'm glad you asked. We would press up a few times back to our Ansible. This is an ad hoc command, like I said. And I'm going to change the module from shell right there to setup. Now, some of you guys already know what's about to happen, but when you run setup, it's the same thing as that gather facts. It's going to go run factor on both of those servers. And this is going to deploy 16 pages or so of data per server to the screen. These are all the variables that we could use. Oh, you wanted to know the Ansible Python version? When this was deployed, you wanted to know the Ansible Python version because that was going to be the version that was used for whatever, environments that were going to be run. Okay, you would go add that to your template. Oops, right here. You would go like this. Right, and then down here you would say, oops, Python version, right? And then you would drop that Python version that I just grabbed that variable. Escape : WQ, repush it, right? So we're going to push the playbook. And then now on both of those servers, when I run this one to check what's there, it's going to tell me the Python version. So if there was a different Python version between those machines, if one server was Debian and one server was CentOS 7 in some legacy environment that I'm in, I would know. And the reason you want to stamp this when you do deployments is this. Later on, like after the change management's done and everybody's okayed everything and everybody's, management's clapping themselves on the back because of the work that you and your team did at night that you had been planning for a long time to get right in the time window of your downtime, people are going to forget what the environments were. You're going to forget what the environments are. But the server's not going to forget the stuff that I stamped to it. Does that make sense? So, this is one way to use Jinja. This is one way to use Jinja templating. This could have been built. We only have it right here as one part of one playbook. We just have it as its own little task down here. But this could have been at the end of that deployment that we had worked on up to Lab 6. We had this whole big deployment. And the last thing we could have done was just drop this on there and then had a little stamp at the end to show at this time and date this thing happened. That's it. So that is one way that I like to use Ansible and use Jinja templating. This is the first way. The second way that's been much, much, much more usable to me is to report. So, by the way, let's say you did this lab here real quick. Now over here on the right, you would start answering yourself these questions. What is the variable notation in Ansible? How do I make a variable in Ansible? Well, got that right here. Back to more. Boom. Just two curly brackets or braces open and two closed around the variable called by name. Pretty common. And I say, how do you call a variable? Well, you call it by name. Can you add the Ansible datetime.tz variable to your Jinja 2 template? Did it work when you repushed it to all the servers? This is interesting. What if you wanted to make sure all your servers, as you did the deployment, were in the right time zone? You're getting some weird time zone errors between your systems because your guys, your team has been deploying servers in different areas, but nobody's really taken the time to make sure that everything was right. I'm going to say time zone, and then I'm going to very shamefully steal from myself over here, right? These values. Look, I got the values right here. Ansible datetime.date. I don't have to type it all out if I don't want. Control-Shift-Z. But I need .tz. .tz over here at the end to my Jinja template. Did it work when I repushed all servers? So then I say escape : WQ, and I repush that to all my servers. There. Oops. I don't know what just happened. It's going to run, and then I go look at it. And do I have time zone at the bottom? UTC. Yes. All my servers were UTC when this is deployed, which means all their logs should be synced up. Whatever they're sending out to should, you're not going to be messing up Splunk or anything like that, trying to align logs between 1,000 different systems that are all over the world. That's kind of an important thing. But look at this real quick. You might say, Scott, well, how the heck was I going to know that Ansible _date_time had that? Well, back to this. we go back to where we just did our setup, and we can filter. So -a gives arguments. Filter allows for a file system type wildcard matching. So I can say Ansible date underscore time time like that. So it's going to find everything for me from those servers, Ansible underscore date time. Now, I'm going to show you one that I really love, which is the ISO 8601 basic short. Hold on one second, guys. I think the wife's coming. I'll be right back. Gotta go see if she's coming in here. Sit by me. Alright, I think the wife's coming up. She's wrapping presents for people for tomorrow. So that's always fun. Yeah, she's doing good. But do you guys see how you can gather all kinds of information from your system and just go slam it down into these templates wherever you want? So I say, why is it so important to know how all your servers are set to the same time? Well, that's, man, as a systems administrator, being able to filter through logs, being able to make sure all your stuff is correct. I'm coming back over here so you guys can see me. That's important, right? Let me put it right there. Yeah, that's super important that you guys would be able to get your logs the way that you want them to. And then I said, what happens if you set gather facts variable to false? So go back here, right? YML, YAML, doesn't matter. What if you set gather facts to false? Now, I've kind of explained it like the way I think of Ansible is it likes to it carries all the variables like in a little sack with it. It's almost like a little Krampus. Is it going to get Krampus? That's funny. I always worry if it's going to be able to say the names or not. But if it doesn't have all those variables, then you can't do this other stuff. So this is one of those things where I like to tell you guys, it's one test is worth 1,000 expert opinions. We could sit here all day and argue whether or not this is going to work. But why don't we just run it and see if it breaks all over the place? Well, it's going to break. How are you going to push a template that doesn't have any of the variables in a stack? He goes to reach for the Ansible date time .date and it's not there. So you got to turn that. That has to be on. This matters when we get to. You will not see. You will not see pain. I don't think you will see. You will see slowdowns in Ansible up to 300 nodes. If you're doing up to 300 nodes, you'll sometimes see slowdowns depending on the host that you're executing from, or if you're distributing that execution. But if you start getting over you get over into a few thousand nodes, you will experience true pain of servers trying just the bog of slowness that you'll run into with servers, and it will cause you to rethink the way that you use Ansible. And I've talked about some of the different ways that we use it as a tool. We make the servers configure themselves, so then they're basically bringing their own processor, and that's a much more tenable model for large spaced out systems. And if you guys need to see how to do that, I've talked about it often, but it's up in our system. Where am I at here? Different system. System D. So here's my little Ansible playbook stuff. Hey Rob, how's it going? We're just we're doing some Ansible, and I was showing right now as you guys come in, I was showing a little bit around how Jinja templating works. Yeah, thanks for coming, Rob. I know you probably got to run because it's late for you. But we were playing with a template, and then we were playing with the template file that's actually the deployer. Here's the template. do a little more on that. And I was showing you guys how it's a lot like a, I mean, it's very much like a Mad Lib or a little ad lib where you just put in whatever values you want and it'll just run. So yeah, Rob, that's fine. My wife just got home too, so we'll get off of here soon. So, but because of the rules, I do have to stay on for a little bit with the raid. That's always the rules, guys. Them's the rules, and I'm sticking to them. So as we did the lab over here, and as we finished it, one of the things that we then did was we verified everything. We just did a little ad hoc command to make sure that our stuff was deploying like we wanted. And then we were over here asking ourselves questions from the book, right? We got this prologue book of labs that kind of, you don't need those things. There's that. No, that's funny, Crash Systems. Yeah, you're welcome to hang out. We mostly just work on Linux here, and the focus of this week, we're doing a 16-week Linux systems administration course for people, and the focus of this week, we're in week 14, was Ansible automation. So even though I did that this weekend, and then the focus all week for the guys down in our Discord is like answering questions around it, I was just kind of hammering out some Ansible stuff right now. So yeah. But I tell you guys all the time, like I think we have site reliability engineers around and stuff. Yeah. We got all types as long as it's Linux type stuff. Yeah. And I will tell you guys, since some of you are newer here and don't know me, the purpose of our professional Linux users group is to take hobbyists and show them that they can do this professionally. All of us here, every one of you guys hanging out, probably has at least been a hobbyist. You guys enjoy doing it. But some people just never take the jump over to being professionals at it. And that's kind of the goal of our group, is to show you guys, man, we got cloud engineers, we got security engineers, we got everything, because I really think that Linux is the base for like all this other kind of stuff that you guys can use. So yeah. So let's go back. Let's do a little more with Jinja. So the way this lab started, you can go pop into the lab. Labs are free on Killer Coda, if you guys don't know. Best free website on the internet. Because what it does is it literally just drops you in a shell like this, and you're like, oh man, I'm in a shell doing the exact same thing as this guy. I maintain all these labs, so if you ever have problems with them, you can do git pulls, or you can just let me know. Because, by the way, all the labs are also up in GitHub, so you can pull all the lab information if you ever need an answer or something. But I write my labs such that you can just hit the buttons and it'll do them for you. Because I'm a big fan of you guys seeing it work. And then after you see it work, you can go, oh, that makes sense. And then you modify it for the way that you want to see it. So like in our environment, we've got template.yaml, which is the simplest little, we're just going to push a template, which is a Jinja 2 template, over to both servers that are in my host file, the two servers. Here's our host group. There's our host group from our inventory. And you put the inventory wherever you want, but I'm a fan of local inventories. And we're going to say here to run that playbook and deploy that little Jinja 2 template. And the Jinja 2 template is super simple. We've been adding stuff to it as we asked ourselves questions over here, but the default one is part of the lab. You can copy it in if you want to. Then all we were doing was comparing what the template looked like to the text and say, okay, this is what the template looks like, but this is what it looks like when all the variables have been extrapolated and dropped in to each of those locations on, in this case, 2 servers, but thousands of servers out in the industry, right? Some of you guys have heard me talk about where I've used Ansible in my career. I've used Ansible on over 100,000 machines now. I'm probably up in the 200K range, if we're being serious. But I've done, like, I do high performance compute for a company called Redline, and I do a bunch of government projects, and I've done like NOAA projects, and it's actually funny, I've done some NASA projects. It's funny because they didn't put me on their team, but they needed my help still, so that's kind of funny. Hey, how's it going, Z-Love? I haven't seen you in a while. Sometimes I'll see you over there hanging out and Rob's stuff, and I never want to bug people. So, but yeah, glad you're here. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you. We're just, elbows deep down in the muck of Ansible, and we're just adding more and more to this. But what I was showing you guys is I have 2 ways effectively in my career that I use Jinja templates. I stamp servers. So as I do a deployment of some type, I stamp this along with it so I know the exact way that the server existed when I did this change to it. Like card in the Discord. Nice. Well, hopefully stuff's clicking for you, and hopefully this stuff's good for you, because this is our goal, getting you guys into doing this stuff, showing you that this can be very attainable for you guys. So there's some other questions, digging deeper. There's some template module stuff, and there's some other stuff here. We won't go too much into that because I don't have too much more time. But I'm going to back out of this to all of our labs. And the next lab is the other way that I do this. This has probably been the one of all the things that I've used Ansible for in my career. This one's probably given me the most mileage. You guys know that old engineering thing, your mileage will vary. Right, your mileage will vary. This has probably given me the most right here. What I'm about to link to you guys. This little lab here. So this next one is Jinja reporting. The other one was however many servers we had, we pushed Jinja and stamped our values to the server so the servers knew stuff about themselves. And if we ever needed to go dig in on the server would have information about when the deployment happened on the server. This is going to be different. This is a report that's going to come back to us one time on just this one server. And again, this is like, man, when I'm up late at night, like back in the day when I was up at night, like patching thousands of servers with my team, and we'd be kicking stuff off, and then the playbooks would be running, and oh, the playbook broke, but where did it break, and what servers got patched and what didn't, and yeah, we know it's idempotent, but we don't want to waste the extra 30 minutes of setup that first came, and there's all obviously there's all kinds of efficiencies that can be achieved there, but where I'm going with this is we want to report. We want, and really where you want to get to maturity wise is your team shouldn't even be kicking it off anymore. Your operations bridge or your operations team can kick it off, and then your team can just come on at 10 p.m. and go, yes, these have all worked, and just these 10 things didn't work, and then we can go spend our engineering time on things that are actually fixing stuff. Okay. Z-Love, you've been grading? Yeah, I'm grading finals. Well, this is week 8, so I'll be grading finals at the end of this week. So, yeah, I'm in the same boat doing all that stuff. So, all right, let's look at this real quick. You've been using Ansible, have decided to work with templating tool that comes with it. You're going to use Jinja 2 to stamp a report back to your control plane node, letting you know how a run went on all your different individual servers. So, we do, we do quarters. Actually, yeah, we call them quarters, I think. Because we do way more than 4 a year. So I guess ours probably are better called, I forget what we call it. I think I just call it a semester. But it's quarters doesn't, hold on real quick, guys. Hold on, the wife's coming in. Wife's coming in. Hey, wifey. Hey. You gonna sit down by me?
Yes.
All right, the wife's sitting down behind me here. All right. That did not work like I expected it was going to. Wife's back. All right. She's sitting down behind me. So if you guys have questions for her, she's sitting on her little beanbag chair behind me. Does Ansible work with IPMI or Redfish? So Ansible can work with anything that has Python on it and then has a connection type that it can connect to. So SSH is the most common type. I don't think I've ever seen like a LAN plus or any of those, which are the normal ones. Like IPMI uses a LAN connection type or a LAN plus typically. That's actually the name is LAN plus altogether. But if it's got Python on it and it's got a way that it can connect to, then yeah, there are. And here's where the modules would be. So like if there's an IPMI tool module, Ansible, we would find it here. So yeah, it looks like there is an IPMI power module at least. And then there would be some prerequisites up here, probably some other things you might need. And then down here would be its usage. I always skip all that and I go right to usage. And I go, okay, name, username, password. And we can see the state and we can turn things on and off, it looks like. And then it looks like we can target certain machines. And then we get return values. Then if I need to, from here, if I need from an example to know exactly what state means, then I come up here and I read the state. So state is a string. It can be by default. It's going to be, what's the default? They don't have a default. On, off, shut down, reset, or boot. Those are the kind of things that you can do. So Boom, there you go. Oh, well, if it's RESTful, I can hit a RESTful API with URI module anytime, yeah. In fact, the first half of this stream, I was hitting Vault, and I was pulling information out of Vault. So the first half of this stream was all Vault activities with it Ansible. So yeah, anything that you can hit like that, you can definitely hit 100%. Yeah, I actually have a lab that heavily deals with command validate, use your inventory as variables for physical. Okay, nice. So let's look at this one real quick. This is going to be very similar to the other one, but we're going to do it a little different. So we're going to check our hosts file. Servers are control plane and node 01. They're good. And then we're going to, let's just pull in our things. We're cheating. We could go in and write everything, but let's go and say, okay, what are we trying to do? So root template.yaml. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit both of our servers. We're going to hit both of our servers. So here's the servers, host. It's our host group. And then down here, we're going to do a simple little shell command for uptime, and we're just going to register the variable uptime. Now, uptime is going to have a whole bunch of JSON attached to it of uptime.stdout, uptime.return code RC, and all kinds of values. Then we're going to go in and we're going to report out a template just back, we're going to run it once, just back to this local machine of how all the machines behaved. What are their values? What are these other things? So let's go look at how Jinja kind of takes on like a little bit of a different life when we do this. So template, we're in root already, but template.j2. This will be a little bit different, but again, this is probably the thing that I have used the most in my career to the most benefit in this space. So watch this. We say this is a system validation at time and date. Okay, good. Boom. We pulled that back. And then now we say unreachable systems, and we got a nice little, it's a little format. And then we've got a little loop that's going to happen. So we're going to say for host in Ansible play hosts all, and then we're going to have an end for. This is the control structure inside of Jinja to loop over a variable. So an open curly bracket and a %sign and a %sign and a closed curly bracket. And in here we can say for host, that is just a counting variable, right? Counting variable that spins in Ansible play hosts all. Now, I'm gonna explain to you guys something very simple here in a second. And then we say if host not in Ansible play hosts, drop its name right here. So, real quick, these are special variables. There are a whole bunch of special variables inside of Ansible. In fact, if we say Ansible special variables right here, you'll get a whole bunch of special variables right here. So I'm going to link this to you guys because this is important. It's very important for you guys. Special variables will always be in an Ansible playbook. They will always be there. You can always use them. So watch this. Think about this real quick. Ansible play hosts right here, all, and Ansible play hosts right here. So here's the two that we're using. Now, when I explain this to you guys, I always explain this in the terms of the silliest race I know of on planet Earth. Have any of you ever heard of the steeplechase? Who here knows what a steeplechase is? All right. So at a steeplechase, everybody lines up on a track, right? And when they start, when they set the gun off for everybody to start running, that is Ansible play hosts all. That is everybody that started the race. Okay? But the steeplechase is the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen because you start jumping over these hurdles, right? So you're running and now you're jumping hurdles. It's not a hurdles match. It's not a hurdles race. It's a steeplechase. And then you get to this one hurdle that's a pommel horse, and you're like, what the hell is this? It's a pommel horse. And then there's a big lake of water after it. And you say, what the hell? So I'm dropping into like 6 inches of water as I run. And then you say, well, how many laps do you do? I don't know. It's like 1,600 or 3,200 meters. It's a pretty good long race. So you're running, you're jumping, you're falling, you're breaking ankles in the water. I've seen people go down hard in the water on these things. And this is an Olympic sport. It's called the steeplechase. Go look it up. My point in saying that is the people that started the race are never equal to the people who ended the race. So Ansible play hosts all is the people who lined up in hopes of not breaking their legs. And Ansible play hosts are all the people that made it to the end of this run of Ansible servers. So maybe we had 1,000 servers start, but only 970 got to the end because Pareto's rule says that 80% of our outcomes will come from 20% of our inputs, meaning, you know, you're going to have problems with some servers, right? That's what Pareto's rule says. So we come down here, and if you are not at the starting line, but you were up here, I drop your name right here. That's it. Super simple. All that to say a very simple thing, right? Ansible Playhouse All is who started out, and, you know, as like a little Plinko machine, all the stuff that gets dropped into our playbook. And these are the ones that are still, that make it to the end. You know, they got wet socks, but they don't break their ankles. I've seen people get really injured on that race. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Go look it up sometime. Sometimes I show it, but I've shown it on stream before, and then like YouTube like blocks your, it's the stupidest thing. But anyways, this one's a little more complex. This one is the same thing where we start against all the play hosts, everybody that started the play. But now we look in a variable called host vars that every Ansible server can look at, and we look for the host. So host vars will look the first time for control plane and the second time for node 01 in the .uptime variable. If that variable is defined, we'll drop into the second group of logic where we say if day is in host vars host, so control plane the first time, uptime.std out. If the day is found in there, and this is very Python-esque because it's all Python under the hood, we just look for this string in this string of standard out. What does that tell me? That tells me that my server's been up for longer than a day, because day will not exist in the output of uptime as a command unless it's been up for longer than a day. And then I can say the server has not rebooted today. Now, why do I need to know that? Like, if I'm patching 1,000 servers, I don't want to leave that patching window without rebooting all 1,000 of those servers. So if a server is unreachable because it didn't come back up, I want to know. And if a server hasn't rebooted for some reason, I don't care what that reason is, I want to know. Because then I can spin this off to, hey, you junior engineers go fix these ones, you junior engineers go fix these, and we could use our resources efficiently to get our servers back online. Typically, if you're patching like 1,000 servers, you're probably doing like dev. Prod is a little more controlled, and we use some other, I have some control flows that we use for that. But the point is, when I'm all done, this is the report that comes back to me. All right, so let's go run it, right? This is one of these things we can look at it all day, but let's run it. Let's see what actually happens when we execute this, right? It's going to only bring one version of the report back to me here, just out to the main server. And if I ls it, here's our report. And our report has a value to it that if I were to run this multiple times, it would not overwrite the old reports. So because we're using the value, if we go look in the playbook, press up a whole bunch, here's the playbook. We use our Ansible _date _time .iso 8601 _basic _short. We use that variable right there so that we can keep running this over and over again without ever clobbering our logs. In the other one, we kept clobbering the stamp. We don't want to do that here. We want to always have the freshest, most updated report. And we have no unreachable systems and no servers that have been up longer than a day. So I'm going to modify my host file real quick. I'm going to vi root hosts. And maybe I expected, maybe I'm doing patching, and I expected node 01, node 02, and node 03. Node 02 and node 03 are maybe new ones that one of our junior engineers are building, and they're kind of one-off servers. They've got some special drivers in them, so they're not part of our normal build pipeline. So we were hoping that they'd be up this weekend so we could patch them, but he didn't get them all done. So let's run our playbook again. And when we run this, we're going to see that they're unreachable. But what if an automated process kicked off our patching? Nobody's there to look at this screen. If this was kicked off by Ansible Automation Platform, Ansible Tower, AWX, Ansible, what's the command and control Ansible? There's this new one that people are using as just an execution environment. Nobody will ever see that. So the report will persist. The report will always be there. What's the report say? Hey, there's a couple of nodes I couldn't get to. There's a couple of nodes. Hold on. Because what happens when you fail any task in Ansible, you are no longer in the race. You fell over, they drag you off the track, and you're no longer in the race. Ansible doesn't consider you one of its play hosts anymore. You're still in Ansible play hosts all, though, right? So when you go back again, now this will make a little more sense. Let's look at the Jinja 2. those two nodes didn't exist, so it makes sense that they didn't make it to the end of the playbook. They were here, but they failed execution during, and they're no longer in Ansible play hosts. Again, this may seem like super, super simple, and you might go, oh, that's really simple. Two things about it. One, this is probably the thing I've used the most in my career, and probably has helped me the most to maintain thousands and thousands of servers, right? Two, if this is useful to you and you're doing the lab and you're like, oh, that's good, take it. I don't care. I tell you guys all the time, it was stolen when I got it. No, I did really write this stuff, but use it. I don't care. Like, you don't have to ask my permission. Just take it. I mean, that's how pretty much everything is on the web. You could probably get ChatGPT to generate something pretty similar to that, although I wrote this well before ChatGPT became popular. But yeah, you can go figure all this stuff out, right? And then you can go read all the reports if you wanted to all at once. All right, so that's the lab. Then you come back over here, right? Because now you're all done with the lab, and you ask yourself some questions. You say, how does what we're doing here differ from what we did in Lab 7? Well, in Lab 7, we stamped things out everywhere, so each individual server knew stuff about itself. Now, we're simply reporting back to ourselves the state of systems as they went through this process, whatever our process was here. Now, are these things mutually exclusive? Could I do a task from 7 and a task from 8? Could I stamp something to all my servers on a deployment and also report back to myself what servers were or weren't up? Yeah, you do whatever the hell you want. The execution time is damn near free, right? I mean, there's a little bit of cost of execution time to add a new task to a playbook, but not that much. It's you know, a few more minutes of your Netflix that you're probably watching while this is running on your other screen, right? You guys think I'm joking around a lot, but my wife's sitting behind me. She could tell you I've worked many long nights over the years, and most of the time she catches me just watching Netflix while stuff's running. Like,
that's a fact.
You hear her? She said, that's a fact. That was her saying that, not me. So, all right. And she can also tell you they pay me a whole lot of money for this stuff, and I'm just like, man, I can't believe they pay me all this for this.
I love it.
It doesn't catch your voice. Say that again.
I love it.
I did catch your voice that time. All right. I said, when you run this, are there any nodes shown in the output? Well, there wasn't because there weren't any unreachable. But then when we set ourselves up for unreachable systems, there. And by the way, you might say, why would I set myself up for unreachable systems? I won't ever set myself up for failure if I can help it. But the change management team that maybe pulls out the list of all the servers that you get to patch tonight from like the CMDB database, like, well, that's the configuration management database, I know. So just the CMDB. They are not always they're not going to go check all those servers to make sure they're up. I love doing pre-checks on servers too. That's another thing I do with Ansible. I pre-check all my servers because if there's 10 servers that are down out of 1,000, I want to know that at the beginning of the night. And do you know why? Anybody here know why you check to make sure all 1,000 servers that you have to do are up before you start? I'm going to tell you right now, when this burns you once, you will never want to get burned by this again. Why do you always check your server? Why do you always just run a little playbook to make sure all 1,000 of your servers are up and responding before you ever do anything? Make sure that they have like their repos connected out to your DNF or your satellite and whatever things. What? Anybody know? I know I'm moving fast, but it's because you're going to waste a whole bunch of resources trying to bring those 10 servers back up, and they were already down. Sometimes they were already out being decommissioned. Oh man. Yeah, well, you'll create your own DDoS of your Linux and engineering resources because you'll be spinning. I've done this, guys. I've slogged through a bunch of servers and I'm like, what the hell is this? This server is like a melting environment while I'm in it, and I've had to turn it on when it's over, and I'm like, what the hell is this server doing? Oh, guys, sorry, that was in stage 2 decom. So stage 2 decom is typically where we let a server sit for a couple weeks before we turn it off all the way, and there's like agents that have been turned off on it and all this other stuff, and I'm like looking at these nightmare servers, and I feel like, you ever seen the movie Aliens where they're walking through and it's just like alien tunnels and it's all jacked up and people are stuck to the walls and aliens are bursting out of their chests and just terrible shit? That's how you feel in some of these servers because they were already down before you started. Don't waste your resources like that. Do a pre-check. I should probably write some pre-check stuff. That would be good. But anyway, so we got a bunch of labs out here for you guys to play with. I I mean, look, if we go to all of our labs, go back here. We have 21 Ansible labs for you guys. They're free. We have 7 HashiCorp and Kubernetes labs. I don't do much with the HashiCorp or Kubernetes labs much. There's some really good Kubernetes labs up in Killer Coda for you guys to work on. And then we have 27 Linux labs because that's kind of our bread and butter, right? We do a lot of Linux stuff. Here's the link to all the labs if you guys want them. Again, I don't get anything for it. It's all free, right? You can just go and play in there to your heart's content. And the only limitation of that site is you only have an hour in the environment, but all of my labs you can finish in under an hour. So there's nothing like that. We also have one of our other guys. He wrote a bunch of labs too, and I'm mentioning him because maybe it's back here in creators. Just go right here, Fisherman Guy Bro. The reason I like his labs is he has kind of contentious labs, and his labs are designed to, you're a junior Linux sysadmin, and he doesn't give you the answers. My labs, I give you all the answers, right? You just click the button and it'll take you through my labs. His labs never give you the answers. You have to go find them. You have to get them to work. So you're going to get like work tickets in from this guy named Bob Blursky, and he's like the worst user ever, but you're going to deal with those type of users. So he's got some really good labs out there. Again, they're all free. He also has a really cool one about building your own little local LLM. If you want to build a local LLM and you've never done it before and you want to use Olama, you do it right there. Install Olama, run Tiny Llama, and then ask it questions and make it respond to you and do, like API calls against it. He shows you how to do all that in there. Pretty simple little labs, pretty straightforward setups and stuff. So, okay. Guys, let's I need to get off of here. I've been on for, well, not too long, but let's go to our little end of stream. I appreciate you guys all coming. You guys are always welcome down in the Discord to hang out and just, soak up whatever you want and go as far into any of these career paths that are out there for you. I will keep doing Ansible all this week. That's my goal. But let's go find somebody to raid on the Twitch side. We can't raid on the YouTube side, but we'll find somebody to raid over here on Twitch. Oh, we got Harold on. We'll go raid Harold Pulcher. He's a Microsoft MVP. He's telling dad jokes right now, but he does a lot of really cool technical stuff around building out Arduino, and he does a fair amount of Linux on his stream. So we're not going to hold anything against him for being a Microsoft MVP. He's a high technology guy, and he actually does some pretty cool lab stuff. So I appreciate you guys all coming by. I will see some of you tomorrow night. Take care.